In the last episode, we told the story of the Kurds, 40 million people without a state, carrying genetic roots back to the first farmers. Today, we go deeper into the Zagros Mountains, deeper in every sense, geographically deeper into the rugged western highlands of Iran, and genetically deeper into a past that predates the Kurds, predates the Persians, predates almost every civilization you have ever heard of. The people we are talking about today number between 5 and 8 million. They live in one of the most ancient, continuously inhabited regions on Earth. Their genetic profile is unlike that of almost any other Iranian population, closer to the Neolithic farmers who first settled these mountains 10,000 years ago, than to the later Indo-European migrants who brought the Persian language and the Persian Empire. They are called the Lurs, and most people outside Iran have never heard of them. That invisibility is itself part of their story. The Lurs have been present in the Zagros Mountains for longer than recorded history. They are mentioned in the earliest Islamic historical sources. Their ancestors built the first bronze cultures of Western Iran. Their most famous subgroup, the Bakhtiari, conducted one of the most dramatic nomadic migrations in the modern world. Twice a year, across 300 kilometers of some of the most forbidding mountain terrain on Earth, for centuries. And yet they have no international profile, no famous political movement, no global diaspora that advocates for them. They are simply there, in the mountains of Western Iran, as they have been for longer than anyone can precisely calculate. Understanding who the Lurs are requires understanding something fundamental about the Iranian plateau, that it was not always Persian, that Persia was not always there, and that the peoples who inhabited these mountains before the great empires rose are still there today, carrying in their DNA the genetic signature of a world that existed before history began. The Zagros Mountains form one of the most significant geographical features of the ancient world. They run from the Kurdish highlands in the northwest of Iran southeastward to the Strait of Hormuz at the southern tip of the country. They are a serious mountain system with peaks reaching over 4,000 meters and deep river gorges. These high pastures are green in summer and buried in snow for months in winter, sheltering human settlement for 40,000 years. It was here that some of the most consequential transitions in human history took place, including the first domestication of goats and sheep. The first cultivation of emmer wheat and einkorn happened in this region and the adjacent highlands of the Fertile Crescent. The first permanent villages, where human beings chose to stay rather than follow the herds, were built in these valleys. The people who built those first villages were not Persians, Kurds, or Lurs in any recognizable cultural or linguistic sense. They were the Neolithic farmers of the Zagros, developing in isolation for thousands of years with a distinctive genetic signature. The Lurs are among the clearest living windows into this ancient world, carrying a high level of ancestry associated with these farmers. The Lurs are, in measurable genetic terms, closer to the original inhabitants of these mountains than almost any other living population in Iran. The name Elam appears in some of the oldest written records. Sumerians were writing about Elam 4,500 years ago. Elam was a major power, located in the lowlands at the foot of the Zagros, with extensions reaching into Luristan. The Elamites had their own writing system, Linear Elamite, and spoke a language completely unrelated to any other known family. They built monumental architecture and created art of extraordinary quality before eventually declining after repeated invasions. The Kassites emerged from the Zagros and conquered Babylon, ruling it for over 400 years, the longest dynasty in Babylonian history. They left behind extraordinary bronze artifacts in Luristan, the famous Luristan Bronzes found in ancient burial sites. These include weapons, horse fittings, and ritual objects produced between 1200 and 600 BCE by sophisticated mountain metalworkers. When the Persians brought their Indo-European language to the plateau, they found descendants of Elamites, Kassites, and Neolithic populations. Modern Persians carry a measurable steppe component, but the Lurs carry substantially less of this genetic signature. Luri is a southwestern Iranian language, but their genes tell a different story. The language came from outside. The people were already there. This pattern is language replacement without population replacement. A new language was adopted by a continuous population. Lurs and Kurds diverged from a common Zagros Mountain ancestor approximately 1,000 years ago. Modern Lurs also carry genetic affinities with Mediterranean populations, reflecting the expansion of the first farmers into Europe. Modern Lurs carry echoes of that ancient connection in their genome. Of all the Luri subgroups, the Bakhtiari are the most famous, and for good reason. They conducted one of the most extraordinary regular migrations in human history, and they did so until the late 20th century. The Bakhtiari are a Luri tribal confederation whose traditional territory spans the high Zagros Mountains. Their traditional economy was pastoral nomadism, moving their flocks between high mountain pastures in summer and warm lowland plains in winter. The migration itself, called the Kutch in Farsi, covered approximately 300 kilometers each way, twice a year. The route crossed multiple mountain ranges, including passes at over 4,000 meters elevation that were still buried in snow. Families, their entire household possessions, their flocks, their horses, and their dogs made this journey together. Estimates of the total number of people involved in the early 20th century range from 500,000 to over 1 million people. In 1924, a British film crew accompanied the spring migration and produced a documentary that became one of the most celebrated early ethnographic films. The film showed the crossing of swollen rivers, the ascent of sheer mountain faces, the herding of thousands of animals across glaciers. For many Western audiences, it was the first evidence they had ever seen that nomadic migrations of this scale still existed. The forced sedentarization campaigns of Reza Shah Pahlavi in the 1920s and 1930s attempted to end the Bakhtiari migration. Tribal leaders were executed or imprisoned. Weapons were confiscated. Movement was restricted. The campaign was brutal and partially successful, but the migration was never entirely stopped. During periods of weaker central government control, the Bakhtiari resumed their seasonal movements. Among the most remarkable cultural inheritances of the Luri world is a religious tradition that predates Islam. Yarsanism, also known as al-Ihaq, meaning people of truth, is a syncretic religious tradition practiced in the Kurdish and Luri highlands. Its origins draw on pre-Islamic Iranian religion, Sufi Islam, and elements of Zoroastrianism and possibly older Zagros traditions. Yarsan theology centers on the concept of successive divine manifestations, human figures in whom the divine has been incarnated. They believe in the transmigration of souls, a concept with no place in Islamic theology. They conduct their religious rituals not in mosques but in small gatherings called jam, held in private homes. These gatherings are centered on music, poetry, and communal meals. The sacred texts, collections of poetry called kalam, are written in Gorani, one of the most archaic surviving forms of northwestern Iranian language. Studying the kalam is studying a linguistic fossil, a language form preserved almost unchanged for centuries. In practice, they practice their faith quietly, away from official attention, in the same mountains where their tradition has persisted for centuries. In the early 20th century, antiquities dealers began offering for sale a remarkable category of ancient bronze objects. They were called Luristan Bronzes because they came from the Luristan region of western Iran, the traditional Luri homeland. Today, Luristan Bronzes are held by the British Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Louvre. Most scholars place their production between 1200 and 600 BCE, in the Iron Age. The horse fittings suggest that horses were central to the culture. The weapons suggest warrior values. The Zagros Mountain people had their own artistic traditions and cultural world, largely independent of the River Valley civilizations. The relationship between the Luri tribes and the successive Iranian states that governed them from the Islamic conquest onward is a complex story. The mountain tribes paid tribute when forced to, maintained a practical autonomy that the flatland armies of the caliphate found difficult to challenge. The Luri tribal leaders, known as atabegs, exercised local political authority that was only loosely subordinated to whichever empire nominally controlled the lowlands. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century devastated much of the Iranian plateau, but affected the Luri highlands less severely than the lowland cities. The Safavid dynasty incorporated the Luri tribes through a mixture of coercion and alliance, recognizing tribal leaders in exchange for military service. The Bakhtiari warriors were valued for their toughness and their knowledge of the mountain routes, playing an important military role in the Safavid period. The most dramatic intervention was the forced sedentarization campaign of Reza Shah in the 1920s, which involved disarming the tribes and breaking leadership structures. The campaign forced children into Persian language schools, attempting to subordinate the distinct Luri tribal identity to a homogenized Iranian national identity. The Luri language, never given official recognition, continues to be spoken by millions across western Iran, existing primarily as an oral tradition. Luri dialects have preserved vocabulary and grammatical structures that were lost in the standard Persian that developed from the literary tradition. Specialist performers have transmitted epic poems and love songs orally across generations, often shared by the campfire at night. The genetic data is unambiguous. The Luri populations carry the highest levels of ancient Zagros Neolithic farmer ancestry of any major Iranian group. Their ancestors were herding the first domesticated goats and building permanent villages, while much of Europe was still inhabited by hunter-gatherers. Through Alexander, the Mongols, and the Safavids, the people of the Zagros remained genetically continuous with a past that extends 10,000 years. History tends to be written about empires, but the Lurs represent something undervalued: the persistence of ordinary people through the ages. In the next episode, we travel to the eastern edge of the Iranian world to explore the story of the Baloch people. Subscribe to Hidden Origins so you don't miss it. And drop a comment below. Had you heard of the Lurs before this video?